Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive.
Uh,
Today, we're gonna chill out, so to speak. We're diving into Japanese folklore to explore the Yuki Onna.
ooh, an excellent choice. A figure who definitely sends shivers down your spine, but also there's this strange allure, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, and that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. We've got a ton of stories to unpack, analyses, even some regional variations. It's not just one Yuki Onna, is it?
Not at all. It's more like, well, imagine a swirling snowdrift. It takes different shapes depending on where the wind blows the story, you know? The time, the place. It all matters.
Exactly, and even her names, right? You've got Snow Granny, Snowfall Witch. It's not just about a pretty face in the snow. It's so much more.
Right, like grannies suggest this wisdom, ancient knowledge, maybe even a connection to the land itself. And then witch power, primal force, maybe even a touch of darkness.
So right off the bat, we're dealing with contradictions, beauty, danger, wisdom, wildness. And that complexity really comes through in the stories, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like, take the tale from Niigata Prefecture, The Vanishing Wife. A beautiful woman marries a man, refuses to bathe, and when forced, boom, icicles. It's classic Yuki Onna. Otherworldly, defiant, and deadly.
It's a chilling reminder that her world is not our world. But there's another story that always gets to me. The one where she tricks people into holding a child,
Oh, yeah, that one's creepy.
right? Gets heavier, heavier, and then frozen to death. Terrifying, sure, but there's also this, I don't know, this undercurrent of sadness, of loss. Makes you wonder about her story.
That's a great point. It's not just a monster preying on the innocent. There's this echo of motherhood, lost children that connects to other figures like the Kokokuchu, another child-carrying spirit. It adds this layer of tragedy to the Yuki Onna.
And that's where it gets even more interesting. We're not talking about some singular monster under the bed. The Yuki Onna is connected to this whole web of beliefs, anxieties, and her story becomes a way of exploring those darker, more ambiguous parts of the human experience.
Exactly. And those connections extend to other yokai too. Like in some regions, she's almost indistinguishable from the Yama-uba, the mountain hag,
Hmm.
especially in places like Nagano and Ehime, where the mountains are. Well, they're this powerful presence.
Makes you think about the role of the environment, doesn't it? If the Yuki Onna represents the dangers of winter, the Yama-uba embodies the perils of the mountains. Each region's folklore reflects its landscape and the fears associated with it. But there's also that connection to children, like we see with the Kokukuchu and the Ubume.
You're hitting on something important there, that connection to motherhood, or rather the loss of it. It adds another layer to the Yuki Onna's complexity. She's not just ice and snow. She's entangled with these deeply human anxieties, loss, danger, the unknown.
So is she a villain? A victim? Something more?
Well, that's where the evolution of her portrayal gets really interesting. Early depictions, before the 18th century, she was pretty much all malevolent, icy breath, leading people astray, freezing them in their homes, a force to be feared.
But then something shifts, right?
Yeah, there's this softening, almost a humanization in later stories. Suddenly, she's not just about spreading icy death. She's capable of love, compassion, even sacrifice.
And that shift is key to understanding why she still fascinates us.
Yeah.
It's not just the scary stories, but those that show her vulnerability, her inner conflict. That flicker of humanity makes her truly compelling.
Totally agree. And speaking of compelling, we can't forget Lafcadio Hearn's famous Yuki Onna tale, a prime example of this nuanced portrayal. She spares a young man because of his beauty, later becomes his wife, the mother of his children.
What do you think Hearn was doing with that story? Just romanticizing, or was he tapping into something already present in the folklore?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Hearn wasn't just retelling, he was reinterpreting for a new audience, weaving in his observations about Japanese culture. And with the Yuki Onna, I think he saw a chance to explore the complexities of female power, the forbidden, the possibility of redemption, even for those who seem monstrous.
And he wasn't alone in exploring those themes. We've got sources mentioning some pretty intense behavior, invading homes, draining life force, even seductive, almost succubus-like qualities. She's got a whole arsenal, yet even then there are moments of mercy. She chooses not to kill.
It's what makes her so intriguing. Even at her most terrifying, you sense she's not entirely evil. Her actions are driven by something more complex than just plain malice.
A pattern emerges, right? The Yuki Onna is a figure of contradictions. Winter's fury and a mother's tenderness, a bringer of death and a protector of life. Fearsome, alluring, monstrous, and sympathetic. But what does it all mean? Why do these contradictions resonate so deeply with us?
Because I think they reflect the contradictions within ourselves, within the human experience. We're all capable of great love and terrible cruelty, drawn to beauty, repulsed by decay. We crave connection, yet fear vulnerability. And the Yuki Onna, in all her complexity, gives us a way to confront those contradictions, explore them in a safe, fictional space.
That's a powerful idea. It gets to the heart of why she continues to fascinate us, even in our modern world.
Hmm.
She's a reminder that some things are timeless. The power of nature, the mysteries of the human heart, the allure of stories that make us shiver and think. And we've only just begun to uncover the secrets of this icy enigma.
It really strikes me how her appearance plays into all of this whole contradiction thing. The Yuki Onna, I mean.
Oh yeah, how so?
Well, she's always described as like breathtakingly beautiful, long black hair, flawless skin, those piercing blue eyes.
Right.
But it's always set against this backdrop of, winter's harshness, the snow, the ice. It's almost like it makes her beauty seem otherworldly, even unsettling.
It's like that contrast just amps up the danger, the incredible beauty that could lure you into a frozen death trap without a second thought.
Exactly. It taps into that primal fear we all have, the unknown, the beauty that can deceive. And then there's the way she blends with the snow, almost disappearing. It makes her seem less like a person and more like winter itself, this force of nature, impossible to control.
Which makes me think about how her image has changed over time. Like those early depictions in the Soki Shikoku Monogatari, for example. They focused on her physical coldness, almost like she was just, well, ice.
Right.
But then later stories, they start to explore her, her psychological side, her motivations, her emotions. It's not just about freezing things anymore.
It's a fascinating shift, isn't it? It's like she goes from this abstract force of nature to a fully fleshed out character
Yeah.
with thoughts and feelings. And honestly, that complexity makes her even more terrifying.
How so?
Well, because now she's not just this predictable force of nature. Now she's unpredictable, capable of acting on a whim, maybe driven by emotions we can't even begin to grasp.
Less monster, more person. A very dangerous person, but still. And it brings us back to those moments of mercy, those times when she chooses not to kill. What do you make of those? Just plot devices? Or is there something deeper there?
I think they're absolutely crucial to understanding her because they show us she's not just this, cold, calculating machine. There's something else there. Compassion, maybe. Or even like a longing for connection that goes against her icy nature.
Like she's fighting against what she is, a part of her that wants to be more than just, a creature of winter and death. Which makes me think about those stories where she becomes a wife, a mother. Is that just a way of making her seem less scary? Or
It's more than that. It speaks to this yearning for something more, this desire to experience human connection, even if it means risking her own nature.
So even in those seemingly romantic tales, there's this undercurrent of tragedy, this powerful being sacrificing a part of herself for a taste of human love, human family.
Exactly. And that's what makes them so, so poignant, so haunting. Because they remind us that even the most powerful beings are subject to longing, to loss, to the bittersweet complexities of existence.
And those complexities are what make the Yuki Onna such an enduring figure. Not just a monster, but a reflection of our own hopes, our fears, our struggles with, well, the light and dark within ourselves. But, there's one thing we haven't talked about yet, the actual literary techniques used in the stories, the writing itself. Do you see any patterns, any recurring motifs that stand out?
Well, the symbolism definitely jumps out. The snow, for example. It's not just setting. It's purity, isolation, death, and rebirth. And her white clothing, it reinforces that. Makes her seem like a ghost, an apparition.
And what about the silence? How she's often described as silent or speaking in whispers?
Ooh, good one. I think it adds to the mystery. Makes her seem otherworldly, like she's not quite human, operating on a different level. And it creates that sense of unease, like she's always watching, always listening, even when she seems to fade into the background.
Her silence is more powerful than words,
Yeah.
right? More unsettling because it leaves so much to the imagination. And then there's the breath motif.
Oh, yeah.
Her icy breath as a weapon, this way of freezing her victims. But breath is also, well, life, the soul, that duality. What do you make of it?
Wow, you're really picking up on some interesting stuff. It plays into the idea that she's both life-giving and life-taking. She embodies the whole cycle of death and rebirth that's so central to nature. A walking contradiction, a being who can create and destroy with the same breath.
Which brings us back to that core question, doesn't it? Why does she continue to fascinate us? What is it about this figure, all her contradictions and complexities, that still resonates with people today?
I think it's because she speaks to something deeper than just like a fear of the cold or the unknown. She embodies the power of nature, the beauty and danger of the untamed world, a world we're so disconnected from these days. And in a way, she's a reminder of our own mortality, how vulnerable we are in the face of, well, forces we can't control.
We like to think we're separate from nature, but we're not, are we?
Hmm.
Still subject to its whims, its power. And that message, it feels more relevant than ever with all the environmental challenges we're facing.
Absolutely. And I think there's also this sense of longing associated with her, a yearning for something more than the everyday, the mundane. She represents the unknown, the mystery, the possibility of encountering something that just transcends our experience.
And in a world that often feels disenchanted, overly rationalized, that yearning for the magical, the unexplainable, it's powerful. Like she's a portal to a world where anything is possible. Beauty and danger together. The lines between life and death blurred.
And that's a world I think that we all long to visit, even if it means facing our fears, confronting the shadows within ourselves.
You've given us a lot to think about. The Yuki Onna is definitely a figure who stays with you, makes you question your assumptions, look deeper.
Yeah.
But there's one more layer I think we need to peel back here. What does she tell us about Japanese culture itself? What are her roots in their beliefs?
That's a great question. And it leads us to some really fascinating insights.
So we've covered some chilling tales, dove into the literary side of things.
You've been busy.
We have. But now I'm curious, what about the Yuki Onna and Japanese culture itself? What makes her so significant in their folklore?
Well, there's this really key concept in Japanese thought, the space between things. And it's not just physical space, like the space between us right now. It's also the space between breaths, between sounds, even between life and death. And the Yuki Onna, she embodies this idea of Ma. She exists between the human and the supernatural, between beauty and terror, between winter's desolation, and the promise of, well, renewal.
Wow, it's like she represents the ambiguity of just existing, how things are rarely black and white. And that ties into Shinto beliefs, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Nature is seen as both benevolent and dangerous, full of spirits, forces to be respected. The Yuki Onna, she's not just a monster, she's a kami, a spirit, a deity, part of that natural order.
And like those kami, she can be both awe-inspiring and terrifying. It's
Yeah.
a good reminder that we humans, we're not separate from nature. We're a part of it, subject to its rhythms and its power.
Well said. And those stories where she spares people even shows compassion. It's almost as if she's not bound by our ideas of good and evil. She operates on a different level, a different kind of morality, maybe.
It challenges how we think about things, doesn't it? Like our Western ideas of heroes and villains, good versus evil. The Yuki Onna she doesn't fit neatly into those boxes.
Exactly. She's not bound by those rules. She acts according to the logic of nature, which, let's face it, can be pretty paradoxical and unpredictable.
So she's not just a product of Japanese culture, but a way to understand it, like a window into a different worldview, a different way of thinking about nature and the supernatural.
Couldn't have put it better myself. And that's precisely why she continues to resonate with people across cultures. Because deep down, I think we all sense that there's more to the world than we see, forces we can't quite grasp. And the Yuki Onna, she gives us a way to explore those mysteries, to confront our fears and, well, our fascinations in a safe space through stories.
It's like she's a mirror, reflecting our anxieties about the natural world, life and death, the things we can't control. But she's also a source of wonder, a reminder that there's still beauty and mystery out there.
And I think that's the key to her lasting appeal. She embodies both the terror and the wonder of existence, the darkness and the light, the fragility and the resilience of life itself.
We started this deep dive wanting to uncover the Yuki Onna's story, but we found something much bigger, haven't we? A reflection of ourselves, our cultures, our relationship with the unknown.
She reminds us that the most compelling stories are those that make us think, challenge what we believe, blur the lines, and leave us with more questions than answers.
So as we wrap things up here, we encourage you, our listeners, to keep exploring. Dive into Japanese folklore, look into the concept of Ma, think about how the stories we tell reflect our deepest fears and desires. And who knows, you might even find a bit of the Yuki Onna within yourselves.